Welcome everyone to Wrasslin Raw!
Wrasslin Raw, the podcast that takes you back to when the World Wrestling Federation developed a little bit of an attitude. Thank you for joining us. You're here with Ryan Arico.
Last time I saw a face like that, it was on an iodine bottle.
Joe Gimateo.
What time is it? It's not Savio time.
No, it is not. I love that. I'm the one and only Jason Bartlett. We're going to examine WWE history one episode of Raw at a time. In this episode of Wrasslin Raw, we're going to be talking about the Raw that aired on January 22nd, 1996. This Raw was recorded at the Stockton Civic Auditorium in Stockton, California, and features Vince McMahon and Jerry the King Lawler on commentary. Are you guys ready?
I'm ready.
Yes, sir.
All right, then let's get into it. Here we go again. Monday Night Raw contains action of a graphic nature, with Sonny in that red lingerie. My God, chalking up the pool stick. Last night was, of course, the Royal Rumble, and it was absolutely outrageous. But before we go too far, let's put over Shawn Michaels and how much of a miracle it was that he wrestled and won the Royal Rumble. Let's all just get on our knees and collectively give Shawn Michaels a blowjob. That's what it's what we're here for now. We owe it to him for making him do the things he does. It's all our fault.
And as Shawn famously showed us, don't forget the balls.
Yeah. Well, not just that happened. Some other things happened. The outrageous became the norm, and the inconceivable became familiar, and the bizarre one became the champion. This is, of course, in reference to Goldust winning the Intercontinental Championship. But tonight on Raw, a battle of champions. Bret Hart will be taking on Goldust in a non-title match, World Title versus Intercontinental Title. Also, Razor Ramon will be taking on Hunter Hearst Helmsley. And, of course, because we just haven't gotten enough of him, a very special interview with Shawn Michaels. After the intro, we go into our first match of the night. Vader, with Jim Cornette, defeats Savio Vega by pinfall in 3 minutes. Jim Cornette comes out to interrupt Savio Vega's entrance as Savio is doing his dancing rumba thing there in the ring. Cornette grabs the microphone and lets us know that he's here to answer a question. And that question has nothing to do with Whitewater or the deficit. That question is, what time is it? And I think we all know the answer to that. It's fucking Vader time. This is the in-ring debut of Vader in solo action on Raw, and the music and the look and the way that Vader approaches and enters the ring fucking works. I was psyched for this match. As the action begins, Vader is just an animal, manhandling Savio Vega to the corner and then laying in some great-looking hits. To add insult to injury, after beating Savio down into a puddle, Vader spits on him, not once but twice. God damn, what an animal. As the action goes to the outside, Vader drops Savio onto the ring barrier, prompting Cornette to yell, "It sure as heck ain't Savio time," which got a very deep chuckle out of me. After some more hits in the corner, back in the ring, Vader lands a standing splash in the corner, and then drags Savio out a little bit to land his finisher, the Vader Bomb, getting the 3 count and the victory. To add insult to injury, however, Vader continues on with his assault, giving Savio a weird body slam type move and another Vader Bomb. But in a turn that had me popping my ass off, the official comes over to attempt to break it up, but Vader turns on the official, headbutting him repeatedly before tossing him out of the ring. Jim Cornette appears to have a hard time controlling Vader. This is evidenced by the way that Vader gives Corny a shove when Cornette tries to calm him down. But then comes another referee. This referee is going to get a powerbomb. And now Gorilla Monsoon, interim president, is in the ring, and he's there to chew Vader out. Monsoon and Vader go nose to nose, and that is not a turn of phrase, because Monsoon is just as tall as Vader is. They were eye to eye. The result of this, after Monsoon calls for a microphone, is that Monsoon has indefinitely suspended Vader. Cornette is having an even harder time now controlling Vader, as Vader wants to walk it straight up to Gorilla. Monsoon is not having any of it. Monsoon takes his glasses off and walks right back up to Vader, eliciting a pretty good crowd pop, and honestly a pop from me here at home. When Vader tries to slap Gorilla's shoulder to get his attention again, however, Gorilla retaliates with a knife-edge chop, and I continued popping my ass off for this. The knife-edge chops continued as Vader is driven across the ring. Monsoon goes back to check on the official that's still down, and Cornette tries again to calm Vader, but it's still not working. Vader tosses Cornette across the ring and then does a running splash into both Gorilla Monsoon and the recovering referee in the corner, leveling them both, but then adding on an elbow drop to Monsoon, dragging Monsoon to the corner for a Vader bomb of his own. But then, as awesome as this is, friendship comes to the rescue as Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon hit the ring to save everyone. So guys, as I stated earlier, this was the Monday Night Raw debut of the man they call Vader, and we all knew it was going to have to be a squash to get the monster over, but it seems like Wrasslin Raw favorite Savio Vega drew the short straw yet again. But as I stated, it took a whole new turn after the official end of the match, giving us the kind of storytelling that we can really sink our teeth into and get invested in. Ryan, what did you think of our show opener?
As it started off with Savio's music and then Cornette came in and interrupted him, he started talking, and at first I was confused. I wasn't exactly sure who he was going to be representing until he said, it's Vader time. And then Vader came down, and I was, like you, popping my ass off the moment Vader time started. And even though I was excited, seeing Savio in there, I was like, oh no. You knew this was going to be a squash match, and it was sad that Savio had to be the one that did it. And I was shocked. I guess not really shocked completely, but Vader got one hell of a pop from the crowd. I mean, there were a whole lot of chubby teenagers with gloves on that were doing the Vader V as he came out. So that was good to see. And as they started, immediately Vader went into those, famous stiff blows of his. Like, he was not pulling many punches as he was punching Vega in the face. Vega got a tiny bit of an offensive going, but once they got to the outside, he was thrown on the crowd barrier. Back in, he got some more stiff punches to the face. Not quite Aja Khan stiff, but, they weren't your typical pulled punches. And then the Vader bomb, and of course it was. It was over quick. It was a squash match for Vega. He was the sacrificial lamb tonight for the Mastodon. But you kind of mentioned it, Bartlett. He's one of Wrasslin Raw's favorite, and it seems like for months and months now, we've been saying poor Savio. It's been an ongoing theme, unfortunately, but that doesn't take away from what I thought was a fantastic debut for Vader. He just really looked like the monster they are trying to make him look like, including all this shit at the end with hitting the ref, hitting Gorilla. This just kind of furthered this story that he's just an uncontrollable beast that, even his manager can't rein in when he has to. Hopefully this suspension doesn't last very long. That would be disappointing because I loved seeing Vader here.
This is how you get people to tune into the USA Network and stay on the USA Network for the next hour. I mean, starting a show like this, not fucking Marty Jannetty versus Roy Raymond or whatever, you know? This is a great way to start it out. Vader is a fucking superstar. He just is. As soon as he comes out, he's a superstar. His music is fantastic. Jim Johnston, yet again, coming up with just perfect music for this guy, just like he does with a lot of others. There were 3 kids in particular in the stands that were just absolutely loving it. Ryan, you mentioned that. Those kids are probably bullying kids every day in school.
Like Forky.
Yes. You know, as soon as this match started, I was thinking in my head, like, man, I would love to see an Undertaker versus Vader feud, like right now, you know?
Yeah.
That would work so well.
Much better than Diesel.
Yeah. And I wasn't too bothered by the fact that it was Savio as the sacrificial lamb here. I think that because Vader is a superstar. I mean, it's not like he's losing to someone who's not going to be in the title picture. So, you know, the Vader is a guy that's, you want to put him in that title picture or have him working with top guys very soon. So it didn't bother me too much. And the stuff with Gorilla Monsoon was just perfect. I mean, it couldn't have been any better. And there's an injury. So Vader has that shoulder injury that I read in the Observer. So this was probably a very clever way to help him kind of heal up from that injury. I'm looking forward to how they handle that when he comes back. Like, what is Gorilla Monsoon going to do? Obviously, he's going to dish out some sort of punishment of some sort. Gorilla Monsoon has already given us more as an authority figure than Jack Tunney ever did in his entire career, just in this one night. This is the kind of stuff you want to see out of that authority figure. So I loved every second of this. I loved when Vader went to Vince and said, "You want some?" I loved that. And then his like total freaking out in the back was great after. I mean, everything about this is awesome.
Yeah, 100% agreed on all of that. And you make great points, Joe, about Savio Vega here. I mean, you're absolutely right. He's not losing to some schlub. But at the same time, I have that soft spot for Savio, and I almost wish that we could have had, and I never ever thought that I would be saying this, but I almost wish it would be Marty Jannetty in there. Getting squashed right off the bat.
You don't mean that. You don't mean that.
The way I felt about it was like, I just felt bad that it was a squash match like it was. I knew you had to put Vader up against someone that wasn't a jobber, to establish him as this monster. He had to come in and squash an established guy. It's just a shame that had to be Savio, you know?
Yeah. Well, and here's another thing. If I turn on USA at 9:00 and I hear Savio's music, I'm keeping it on.
Yeah.
If I hear Marty Jannetty's, I'm switching to Nitro, and I'm going to miss all of this.
Yeah. Great point.
Or no music where we just go right into the match from a jobber.
Yeah. All right. Well, in our episode here, there's a commercial break, and then we come back to both a replay and then the aftermath of the attack on Gorilla Monsoon, with Gorilla being taken out on a stretcher. Cut to Cornette backstage with Vader for what was supposed to be an interview or comment to explain things, but what we really get is Vader manhandling Cornette and taking over the focus of this. Vader has declared war on every wrestler in the WWF and every official in the WWF, and that includes you, Mr. McMahon.
And that garbage can.
And the... Before losing his shit all over again and just completely demolishing this backstage locker room area place that he's in. And when I say trash, he fucking demolishes it. I mean, Ryan referenced the trash can. It almost looked like he picked it up and was beating his face into it and taking bites out of it before slamming it into chairs. And it was amazing. Just because of how noteworthy it is, I have to ask you guys, and we'll go with Ryan first on this. What did you think of just the backstage scene? This intense promo.
Fucking fantastic. He looked like a fucking animal. Like you said, like a fucking, I mean, I know this is a different wrestler, but a junkyard dog just chewing on, like just destroying everything in its path. It was great.
Yeah, like I said in my recap of that match, he's a legit superstar. This guy is unbelievable. And the pairing of him and Jim Cornette, I mean, it can't be more perfect.
Yeah, you know what? And that's something that has taken a little bit of time to sink in on me. Like, I didn't dislike it before, but these little scenes that we get of Cornette just being kind of tossed and ragdolled by Vader, you know, I don't have that rabid hatred of Cornette like some people do. I like him as a business mind, but I like him even more as a character. I've always been a fan of his heel manager gimmick, and usually he's the dominant mouthpiece. He's the guy standing in front of the Bulldog. He's the guy standing in front of, you know, Yokozuna. But in this case, he barely gets 2 words out before he's just shaken to hell and tossed to the side. It's a really interesting change of pace for him, and I think it kind of freshens him up in my eyes. You're really bringing me around to this pairing as being a really, really good setup.
I don't want to spoil anything from later on, but when he comes in during the Shawn Michaels interview, like it just continues right off it because he's playing off that he's just exhausted.
Yeah.
Having to deal with Vader, you know. Just great stuff from him all around this episode.
Yeah. Well, that backstage demolition session is going to take us into our next match. Hunter Hearst Helmsley defeats Razor Ramon by countout in 8 minutes and 1 second. We have latched on to the idea that sex sells because Hunter now has a valet and she is extremely well proportioned. Her name is Shay Marks, and at first I thought that was a rib on us, the viewers, you know, Marks, but because I just could not let it pass without looking into this. Shay Marks is her actual name, and she is the Playboy Playmate of the Month for May of 1994. Trust me when I say that is worth a Google search. Before the match gets officially started, though, we get a picture-in-picture of the $1 Million Man Ted DiBiase and the 1-2-3 Kid, claiming that Razor Ramon is a whiny crybaby. And to illustrate this point, they have an oversized cartoon baby bottle and diaper. For the record, I absolutely hated this. Fucking terrible. But thankfully, it was short. It was very short, and we got right back to the match. It's no surprise that these two work well together. The action here is smooth, fast, mostly flawless. We break to commercial on a nice reversal over the ropes and come back to Hunter in control. We get a brief aside with the King talking to Shay Marks, and of course it was lame, but it is what it is. As we're taking a break in the ring, sitting in some holds, the 1-2-3 Kid comes out to interfere a little bit as Razor gets knocked down to the mat with his head hanging over the apron. The 1-2-3 Kid shoves that cartoon baby bottle into Razor's face. Maybe you guys can help me out on this one. I didn't see anything come out of it. Like there wasn't a liquid or maybe like a powder, or I didn't see any evidence of harm being done, if that makes sense. Maybe it was just a demoralizing tactic. I don't know, but it was pretty fucking lame, is the point of that. And that's what Razor needed to get his wits back, apparently, because then Razor takes Hunter out. But, of course, Razor has to take off after the Kid, just chasing him around in circles around the ring. Didn't even go up the entryway. This roundabout around the ring results in Razor losing by countout. But then after he realizes what has happened, Razor climbs back into the ring and attempts to put the Razor's edge on Hunter Hearst Helmsley, but Hunter manages to get out quickly enough and leave in the arms of Shay Marks. I thought this match was pretty good in terms of action, but it just wasn't enough in terms of storytelling. At this point, why should I care about this match between Hunter and Razor? It just feels like it was a vehicle to give the 1-2-3 Kid a way to interfere, and that's not something I'm necessarily up on right now, especially with the 1-2-3 Kid being attached to the $1 Million Man. As technically good as this match was, I thought it just lacked a certain something in its delivery. Joe, what did you think of this?
Well, I too performed a Google search on Miss Marks. And boy, I'll tell you what.
Yeah.
I will agree with you. It is worth the Google search. While on that topic, this is my favorite version of Hunter Hearst Helmsley, when he was coming out with these random women kind of doing like the Playboy gimmick type of thing. Because, you hate this guy already because he's just a snob, but now he's getting these beautiful women every night and bringing them to the ring. So it's like, man, I hate this guy even more. So I just think it added a lot to his character and was excellent. This baby stuff it's really bad. It's really bad. But to hear you talk about it just makes me laugh. Like, this is real shit, like they actually did this. I can't believe it. And I hate to say we better get used to it because I feel like we haven't seen the last of this. The match kind of upset me a little bit because like this is a pay-per-view level match. But like it was one of those things where it's like, okay, I know there's going to be a fucking run-in or some bullshit that's going to happen and ruin the pay-per-view caliber match that we could have had here to start a feud with Hunter Hearst Helmsley and Razor Ramon, which would be fantastic. But we get this fucking baby shit with the 1-2-3 Kid, and the Kid is still not a good heel. Like, he still has the same gear, he has the same look. They didn't play his music, but they're still using the same music. I just don't understand why they're going to keep going with this. And now, to make things worse, you're bringing in baby bottles and diapers. It's awful.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. The action in the ring is absolutely phenomenal. I mean, these two guys, of course, they could work together. But right from the get-go with this cartoon promo with the fucking baby bottle and diaper. I mean, that baby bottle looked like something that you would pop a balloon for at the county fair. Yeah. It was just such a terrible looking prop. And then for them to bring it out later and it to actually cause the end of the match is disgraceful. But everything between the baby bottles was great. I mean, I want this feud to continue, like you said, Joe. But it's not going to, because this is all about setting up with this continued feud with the Kid that seems like it's been going on for half a year at this point, and it's gone nowhere. They have yet to actually have any matches with each other or any that are allowed to actually come to the end of the match. They just keep on interrupting each other and continuing it, but never coming to a conclusion. And if this is where it's going to go, they should just drop it and give it up, because this was really bad. Not the match, though. I just wish we could have more of this match and less of the baby shit.
We finally escape like the midget stuff, and then the fucking toe main poison, and then we're getting this. Like, it's like, we get Vader, we get all this great shit, we get these two great wrestlers in a match, but then we get fucking baby bottle stuff.
Yeah, how could you could just ruin two great wrestlers in a match like this with that?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's almost like we're in this weird transition phase where we've got all of these new things starting. Vader, it just comes to mind immediately, but we also have these holdovers from the dark times in the WWF that we need to resolve, but we just can't, because they were never good to begin with, and you can only resolve something that's good. This just has to peter away on its own, but as Joe said, I mean, I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon. Unfortunately, I think it's probably going to go until Scott Hall leaves.
I guess we can chalk it up. Maybe it's Razor's fault because of all the problems that he didn't want to work with Goldust.
Yeah.
So they said, all right, we'll go back to your buddy in the clique here, and you could work with the Kid.
Yeah, but that was, from what I read, it was more, he wanted to work with Helmsley, and they refused because they wanted Goldust to get the title. So I don't know.
Yeah, see, whenever I was watching this match, I was thinking of your report about that, him preferring to work with Hunter. But then the 1-2-3 Kid showed up, and I was like, well, what the fuck is this? It just it didn't line up, and that could have been really good. As we've all said already, you know, if the 1-2-3 Kid had just not come out, if we had maybe gotten some kind of, you know, shitty heel cheating win from Hunter, maybe Shea Marks could have given Razor a nut shot, or I don't know, something, anything that could have gotten a little bit of momentum going between these two. But no, as soon as we get something nice, it just gets all fucked up. This is why we can't have nice things.
Or even just a simple DQ from Hunter doing something, you know, I don't know.
They can't seem to leave well enough alone and let things build organically. They have to shoehorn stuff like this in. Speaking of shoehorning bullshit in, supposedly, this is going to be the last installment, purely for comedic effect, I assure you, of Billionaire Ted's Wrasslin War Room. And just listeners, dear listeners, please note that Vince McMahon has said this is going to be the last installment of Billionaire Ted's Wrasslin War Room, and while he is technically correct, he violates that promise in spirit later on. The point of all of this is that Ted and the rest of the War Room are attempting to come up with their own original idea, and in doing so, they make fun of themselves by playing up the Scheme Gene call-in line. You know, that exact thing that the WWF does, except you're calling JR instead of Scheme Gene. You know, option 6. We cut back to the arena, and apparently Raw has a band. It's fucking... What was that guy's name from Saturday Night Live? It's like
G.E. Smith.
Yeah, the G.E. Smith band. That was the first thing that came to mind. It was like, holy shit, it's G.E. Smith. They looked like a bunch of studio session players that did Queensryche covers. But as to be expected, Doc Hendrix is out with the band. He's playing air guitar with
the Cocaine Jam. This song's called the Cocaine Jam.
Could he have looked any more like a stereotypical cokehead? Just there nodding his head to the music and air guitaring.
Yeah.
I just glancing at our tour schedule, I don't think this is going to last outside of Stockton. There's only a couple recordings made in Stockton, California. So this must be it has to be a one-off, because I don't ever remember there being bands outside of special events. But anyway, let's go to Vince in the ring, because I don't know about you guys, but I feel a need. There's an emptiness in me right now that can only be filled by the most flamboyant, the most charismatic, the most oversaturated Heartbreak Kid, Shawn Michaels. And Shawn gets fucking pyro for a fucking interview. Ladies and gentlemen, he is headed to WrestleMania! Vince is just so ridiculous. Like, he might as well be bending over and spreading his cheeks for Shawn Michaels here.
Jeez.
Shawn is most definitely on something here. That is just my opinion and mine only, but it really looks like he is wired up on something. And Vince, while Shawn is giving his promo, Vince just looks on so lovingly and approvingly and adoringly the entire time. This is all just a vehicle for the interesting parts. We do waste a ton of time fluffing Shawn Michaels here, but the interesting part of all of this is that Shawn Michaels has an issue with Owen Hart after all of that shit-talking that Owen Hart was doing about putting Shawn Michaels out of commission. This brings out Owen Hart's manager, Jim Cornette. This is what Ryan referenced earlier. Cornette comes out looking sweaty and disheveled and just like he got manhandled by Vader in a locker room. To mitigate things on behalf of Owen Hart, this, of course, prompts Vince to defend Shawn Michaels with every fiber of his being, getting indignant on behalf of Shawn. But Shawn wants Owen Hart and says that he is willing to give up anything for it. And in a great turn, Cornette suggests that if Shawn wants Owen, Shawn has to put his WrestleMania title shot that he won by winning the Royal Rumble on the line. Shawn accepts, then tosses Cornette out of the ring and immediately begins stripping frantically. Joe, what did you think about this whole turn of events and the way that this title shot is now in play?
Well, I actually really enjoyed this Shawn Michaels interview. I thought that this was his best interview as a babyface so far, because I am on record saying that I am not a fan of babyface Shawn Michaels, but I thought this was great. And Jim Cornette coming out and Shawn Michaels throwing him out of the ring, like Billionaire Ted skits are not funny. You know what is funny? Jim Cornette getting tossed out of a ring. It was funny to me. Vince getting mouthy with Cornette was pretty funny. He probably got a chub when Shawn put his arm around him, too. I hate that Owen was already squashed. I still hate that. I hate it that they did that. I have to just try to forget about it because this is very clever storytelling. Shawn Michaels is going to put up his title shot against Owen to get revenge. And you guys know who the champion is right now. It's Bret Hart. So you're kind of thinking, oh, maybe we get another Owen versus Bret feud then, you know, if Owen beats Shawn Michaels. So it's pretty clever storytelling, I think. And just, I thought it was great. I thought Shawn Michaels cut a pretty good promo on Owen. And I think that Jim Cornette came out and did his job perfectly.
Yeah, Joe, I completely agree with you. You know, outside of Vince just going absolutely apeshit when he was announcing Shawn. I mean, just in his eyes, he was like eye fucking Shawn Michaels as he came down to the ring. But once you got past that, I thought Shawn Michaels cut a beautiful promo on Owen, and then the way Cornette came in and the stuff he did, not really tricking, but, you know, convincing Shawn to put the WrestleMania shot up. I mean, all of this was just really good. And Shawn, as annoyed as I have been with him over the last couple months, I thought he did a fantastic job here. Him and Cornette. Those are the two. I forget about Vince, but him and Cornette did a absolutely fantastic job here, setting this up with Owen. And I'm excited because, I mean, Owen versus Shawn Michaels, I mean, that doesn't seem to be possible to be a bad match in my mind.
Yeah, I agree with almost everything you guys have said here. I personally wasn't really that up on Shawn's part of this interview and his promo. It wasn't terrible to me, but it wasn't all that great either. Things really got going when Cornette came out, though, and I think maybe that's what is making me think that way, because to me, Cornette stole the show here. My favorite line of his during this was whenever Shawn started to get worked up about the proposition of the title shot. He's, I've worked 11 years for this, and I've poured my sweat into this business, and he starts getting ramped up, and Cornette just interrupts him and says, I don't care about any of that. This is the deal, and you're either going to take it or you're not. And for whatever reason, that popped me. I was all in on that, and I do love where this is going. Like both of you have said, Shawn Michaels and Owen Hart, that's going to be a good. Well, I shouldn't be that confident. It has every reason behind it to be a good match. The storytelling is great, Joe. Like you said, this gives us the added drama of maybe we're going to get Owen and Bret again. All of those things I am 100% behind. And again, I didn't dislike Shawn in this. It just was not enjoyable, I guess. It just was typical wired Shawn.
I think about the past few months that we've seen from Shawn Michaels stuff. We get musical tributes. We get, I'm sad. I have to give up the title because I got beat up. And then we get, I'm sad. My doctors tell me I shouldn't wrestle, but I'm going to anyway. Then we get this. I'm like, okay, this is a breath of fresh air.
And not just that, but, you know, it takes two to tango. And when he was up there just talking with Vince, it wasn't that great. But once Cornette came out, I'll give you that Cornette brought a special aspect to this. But without Shawn there playing off of him, yes. I don't think it's as good.
Yes. You know what? I will give you that. Absolutely. It takes two to tango. And if it's just Shawn Michaels and Vince blowing him in the ring, I mean, yes, it might be a different tone than we've had before, but it's still kind of the same thing that we've had for months, to your point, Joe. Even though it's more upbeat than the last ones, it's still Vince blowing Shawn. But once we get Cornette there, we step out of that. We get into a what would you call it, like almost an adversarial kind of promo, going back and forth at each other. And that was, to me, a lot more gripping than just Shawn.
Absolutely.
But all in all, I am looking forward to this. This was good stuff for the most part, and it really has me positive about the future. And I really think that's going to be a good match. I really hope it will be. But what I don't think will be a very good match is next week on Raw. Diesel will be taking on the British Bulldog again. And I just don't think that's going to be good. Something that might be interesting, though, and this is something that we've talked about and hinted at in the past, Shawn Michaels will be taking on Yokozuna next week on Raw. Joe, I'm pretty sure you were the one that mentioned a few times over the past few months that Shawn Michaels and Yokozuna could be a very interesting pairing. Are you still of that opinion?
Yeah, I think that we got to see a little bit of it in like a Survivor Series or a tag match at some point, but
yeah, the wild card match.
But yeah, similar to Undertaker working well with Yoko, if anyone else could, it's Shawn Michaels, right?
I mean, I always think back to he got a serviceable match out of King Kong Bundy. That is just an amazing feat.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Yokozuna is Owen Hart's tag team partner, so there's going to be some kind of stuff going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Well, just because we had to see it, and I'm happy we did, let's get another quick view of Doc Hendrix jamming with the Raw band before we go into our final match of the night. Bret the Hitman Hart defeats Goldust with Marlena by submission in 10 minutes and 58 seconds. And here is where we get the official word that this gorgeous woman's name is Marlena. As Joe pointed out in our Royal Rumble 96 episode, the first time we saw Marlena, we did not get her name. It was kept a mystery, and it really enhanced the storytelling by keeping that from us. We do get her name here, though, and as they're entering, we get a split-screen view of Goldust giving a promo that I was unable to hear or understand because the entrance music going on in the other screen was just completely overpowering it. I would really love to tell you, or at least give you a summary of what he said, but no fucking clue what he said. Apparently, Bret's knee is damaged here, and this got me a little bit wary of the match we were about to have. Supposedly, Bret was injured during an elbow drop off the corner to The Undertaker during his match at the Royal Rumble, and we do see Bret hobbling a little bit, but it just kind of made me worry that maybe we were bringing to life that old chestnut of Bret Hart storytelling, and that is powering through an injury and overcoming an injury. It seems like we kind of fall back on that a lot with Bret Hart. As soon as the match gets going, there's a pretty clear chant going on that is a slur for male homosexual individuals. It is loud and it is clear, and with the view from the hard camera, any lip reader could see what the audience was saying. And then we cut to commercial. Coming back from commercial, we have some interesting hold work from Goldust on Bret, with Goldust having control of the hold for most of the time. And what's interesting here was their movements around the ring, selling that these moves were locked in and that both competitors were stuck in trying to reverse each other but being unsuccessful. Finally, though, Bret reverses, and then we cut to commercial and come back to Goldust putting Bret into another hold. At this point, I did pick up a hilarious line on commentary when Lawler says he was going to show Shea Marks his Iraq war medals, and Vince answers with a very disgusted, "You're what?" I loved the sell from Goldust, wildly swinging at the air like he was punch drunk after getting a rope burn treatment from Bret. Marlena tries to take Goldust out, and by that I mean walk him out of the ring area up the entryway. But then Razor comes out and meets Goldust in the entryway in order to slug him and then bum rush him back to the ring, where Razor tosses Goldust in. And then we cut to commercial. We come back to Bret Hart in control, putting on a side Russian leg sweep and then the sharpshooter, which almost immediately gives us the submission and the victory for Bret Hart. It was stated here that this was Goldust's first loss. I was a little surprised by that. I admit I wasn't keeping track, but good on him. If he's going to have his first loss to the champion, that's pretty damn good. But then Vince climbs into the ring to interview Bret about the Royal Rumble last night and the upcoming cage match with Diesel now being moved to February. I don't know if you guys remember the talk of that from the week before the Royal Rumble. Unfortunately, the Hitman's music is still blaring on the PA, and it makes it a bit hard to hear and understand what Bret is saying. But the gist of it is that Bret is pissed off about Diesel and his interference, robbing Bret of a clean win yet again. Bret is looking forward to the steel cage because he's not a fan of Diesel, and he assures The Undertaker that The Undertaker will get a rematch. Next Monday on Raw will be Super Monday, apparently, with Shawn Michaels taking on Yokozuna, Diesel taking on the British Bulldog. We will get an update on the condition of Gorilla Monsoon. And in a truly disappointing turn, we are informed that we will get a response from Billionaire Ted. He told us it was over. It's not. And that's it. We fade to black. Ryan, please, what did you think of our final match and the way that Raw ended tonight?
They make their entrances to the ring, and then we immediately cut to this Goldust promo. And, I agree with you. Sadly, we couldn't really hear any of it. I mean, I was able to make out a word here or there, but with the music from the Hitman blaring in the ring, you couldn't hear anything. So, that was a bit unfortunate. And then they mention the Hitman's knee injury. And it's funny because my head went to the exact same place. Like, I'm thinking, no, not another one of these. He's going to play up an injury. But thankfully, this is really the only time it came into play. At no point in this match did he start to play off the knee injury. So I was very thankful for that because I thought these guys worked fairly well together. I mean, they have two different styles here, but I thought they meshed fairly well together outside of the multiple commercial breaks that happened constantly. The moment something pivotal would start to happen, they would go away to a commercial break. I also loved the one point, there's multiple body rubs out of Goldust, but the one time they were showing a wide shot and you saw that him and Marlena both were doing the body rub. Yes. Like when he did it, Marlena did it too, which is a really cool touch, I thought. And you mentioned Lawler bringing up the golf war medals that he wanted to show. Like, what a consummate heel, right? Even using stolen valor. We rag on him at times, but sometimes he really is great. And here I give him credit. He got a good laugh out of me. I thought this was a great way to give Goldust his first loss. He's the Intercontinental Champ right now, so you don't want to bury him. So no better way than make him lose to the heavyweight champ, right? I mean, who's arguably the best in the business right now. So great job there, not, still elevating Goldust, but he took a loss. Like, when you lose to Bret Hart, especially when he has the heavyweight belt, it really doesn't feel like that big of a loss. So I thought that was a good way to still push Goldust, but make him lose. So I thought all around this was a pretty solid match, and I enjoyed it.
Well, like you mentioned, Bartlett, Vince finally, well, not finally, but he tells us that her name is Marlena. We don't really know much else about her still, other than she's doing like this director gimmick, I guess. We assume that she's a love interest, but we don't know. So again, it's great storytelling. We don't know what's going on between Marlena and Goldust, and I love that they're taking their time with it. Marlena is so perfect. This is peak Goldust for me. Mm-hmm. And I think that peak is gonna continue, but this is just, these two are just, they're just great at what they're doing right now. Goldust is the Intercontinental Champion. This is a big deal. This is to have a match on Raw, the Intercontinental Champion versus the World Heavyweight Champion. I mean, that's big time for what we've seen on other episodes. And with Razor Ramon coming out, throwing Goldust back in. This is, we rag on it quite a bit, the friendship stuff, but this is the type of friendship stuff that I want to see. Just throw him back in. Here you go, Bret. And then he just leaves. No fucking crazy over the top stuff from Vince McMahon or anything else. It's just throw him back in and leave. I thought it was perfect. And it kind of helps Goldust because, Bret Hart beat him, but Razor Ramon also kind of beat on him and threw him into the ring. So it kind of helps Goldust a little bit. Did you guys notice how Goldust lost this match? He tapped out to the sharpshooter, which we haven't seen that at all. So the first time I've seen someone actually tap out. So I thought that was pretty cool. The match itself I thought was great. Like you guys said, the commercial breaks were kind of annoying, but I thought the match was great. Vince interviewing Bret Hart after, I thought this was one of the best Bret Hart promos that I've seen in a long time, because he's kind of approaching it as, Diesel is this annoying motherfucker. Like, I just can't get rid of him. And guess what, guys? Diesel is annoying right now. Yeah. So it makes sense. And then when Vince mentions like, you're going to have him in a steel cage, Bret says, I'm deadly in a cage. And I fucking popped my ass off when he said that. He just says, I'm deadly in a cage, and walks away from Vince. To me, that's just classic Bret Hart. The guy is a technician, and he trained in a fucking dungeon. He trained in a place called the Dungeon. So we know he's a badass. You know what I mean? I liked this promo. I thought it was great. As far as the Billionaire Ted shit, I mean, like I mentioned before, it's one of those things where like they just need to stay in their lane. Like, you're not comedy writers. Mm-hmm. You're wrestling writers. Let your talent do the comedy, because what's funny is Goldust putting on a trench coat and driving away in a Cadillac.
Yes.
What's funny is Shawn Michaels throwing Jim Cornette out of a wrestling ring. Like, that's funny. Not fucking Billionaire Ted. I don't understand why they think this is hilarious and showing it every single week. It's crazy.
I want to say I completely forgot to talk about Bret Hart's promo that he cut at the end here, because I agree. This is what I want to see out of Bret Hart. This, to me, is just standard Bret Hart, in the fact he was aggressive and angry. And when he was talking about Diesel, talking about him whining and bitching and moaning about the excuses of corporate America or whatever. And then also in that same breath says, but you know what, Undertaker, you got screwed and you deserve another shot at my belt. This is Bret Hart being intense and aggressive, yet fair and balanced. And that is what I think of when I think of Bret Hart. It couldn't highlight his characteristics more than this promo.
Yeah, that is spot on, Ryan. That's a great way of putting it, because that's pretty much the way I see Bret Hart too. And the word that came to mind with me with this promo for him was just the aggression in it, but kind of like almost a restrained, controlled aggression, like a pacing lion in a cage, which also gets back to what you pointed out whenever he said that he's deadly in a cage. As much as I was having a hard time understanding a lot of what he was saying because of the music playing, it did come across as a genuine, like an authentic Bret Hart promo. And I think I'm starting to line up with Joe as this being my favorite kind of Bret Hart. Now that we've seen a couple versions of him, we saw the honorable babyface, or at least attempt at a babyface Bret Hart, but I think I kind of like the arrogant prick Bret Hart. Well, arrogant prick that can back it up Bret Hart better. All right, well, as we said, that's the end of the episode, so we're going to take it on over now to highlights and lowlights. Ryan, why don't you stick with it and go first?
I thought tonight the highlight was easy. The debut, or I guess Raw debut of Vader. Just absolutely amazing. There's not a ton I could really add to it other than he just looked exactly what they wanted. Just this unstoppable beast. He played it up to a T. It was great. Low light, there wasn't a ton. This was a very strong Raw, I felt. And really the low light goes to the end of the Razor Hunter Hearst Helmsley match, the baby shit with the kid. Very fitting, I guess, since the kid hasn't changed his name, his music, anything else. He's just like a baby. So let's put a bottle in his hand and ruin this match. And that's what he did. That was the low light.
This may be a first for me, but I am not going to point out a highlight or a lowlight. I loved this episode of Raw. I loved almost all of it, pretty much. I mean, I could nitpick and say, Yeah, I could nitpick and say the baby bottle shit or the billionaire Ted, but you know what? The other stuff was so good. The Vader angle is probably one of the best things we've seen since we started this podcast on Raw. It could be. The Shawn Michaels interview, I loved it. I loved the Bret Hart and Goldust match and the quick interview with Bret Hart after. So, yeah, I think the show itself is a highlight, I guess, but I don't have any lowlights to point out.
For me, the entire Vader angle, I'm lining up with Ryan on my highlight. Just everything. The match, the interactions with Cornette, the interaction with Monsoon, just all of it. All of it was awesome. Loved it. For my low light, this is a bit of a nitpicking kind of a thing, but my low light is going to be what I see as production errors in this show. Now that we're moving on to 1996 and there's actually competition out there in the form of WCW Nitro, there's no room for these kinds of stupid, sloppy mistakes. I mean, sound levels to where you can't understand promos, and that's more than once in this episode. Bunching the commercials up and giving you more commercials during your main event of the night than you had in the entire rest of the episode. And not just that, but mistiming them and putting them in the most inappropriate places in the match. I mean, I can't blame it all on production there. There's timing that happens in the ring, and there's communication that happens in order to, go into a hold when it's time to go to a commercial. And obviously none of that was happening. So my low light is the fact that they're still having these little hiccups and not fully polishing their product in order to really compete. So they need to step it up there. Joseph, do you have any contemporary wrestling news from on and around January 22nd, 1996 for us?
Yes, I do. Dave Meltzer reports in The Observer that the Vader angle is the best angle in a long time, so he's a big fan of that. He also noted that Vader still does not have a contract, so he must have a handshake deal with the WWF right now.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Speaking of Vader, the latest episode of Boy Meets World aired on January 19th, 1996, and it starred Vader as the father of a middle school kid named Frankie that everyone is afraid of. You guys know now that the Body Donnas are known as Skip and Zip. Well, Zip was originally named Flip, but they had to change it because there was a copyright on the Skip and Flip name from a 60s singing duo. I thought that was funny too because during the Rumble, was it during the Rumble that Vince called him Flip and Mr. Perfect had to correct him?
Yeah, either that or Perfect was fucking with Vince and saying, "Is that Skip or is that Flip or is that Zip?"
Yeah. And the last piece of news here, so Bret Hart, when he gave his interview, he had a black eye. I guess he got that during this Goldust match. So I don't know if that interview was later, because you know how they do the recordings.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Or maybe he got a shiner just right away. I don't know. But that actually came from that Goldust match. And that is all.
All right. Thank you, Joseph. Illuminating as always. And that's it, folks. We are done with this one. I want to thank you again for joining us. If you like what we're doing here and want to connect with us, you can email us at WRASSLINRAW and just add @gmail.com to the end of that to submit questions or comments. Check us out on social media and on every podcast subscription platform. While you're out there, don't forget to follow and subscribe to get every episode of Wrasslin Raw coming to you every week. Give us a 5-star review and let your friends know how much cooler they would be if they became Rawheads like you and me. Next week on Wrasslin Raw, we're going to take a look at the Raw that aired on January 29th, 1996, with matches featuring Yokozuna, the Godwins, and many more. So, for Joe and Ryan, I'm Jason, and this has been Wrasslin Raw.